morning. It's 8:30. We'll get started with the Franklin County Board of Commissioners meeting.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Present.
Commissioner Harris?
Present.
Chair Dickinson?
Present.
Commissioner Dunn?
Present.
Vice Chair Waymire?
Present.
All right, please join me with Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think we have a preacher this morning, so we'll move into correspondence and organizational business. Do we have anything?
Oh, man.
All right. Do we have any general public comment?
Yes, we do.
All right. A citizen desiring to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so at this time. Discussion is limited to 5 minutes. The commission will not take action or discuss items at this time. Discussion should be limited to matters of county commission business, and public comment is not permitted in regard to personnel matters or on pending legal matters. Items introduced under public comment may become agenda items at a later date.
Norman Woogie?
Good morning.
Morning.
Got a full house. There's been violations of discrimination through the commission because of lack of action. The requirements should be met or exceed the ADA requirements as written in the federal law. One day, if we live, we're going to all be in a wheelchair. I think each of you would want to obey the act. That you would care enough about the people's well-being to help the people of Franklin County to meet the ADA language, that everyone can move safely. Old people have heart attacks and strokes and fall. Old people's bones break easier. Old people heal slowly. Think about the people with disabilities. You have been notified quite some time ago with a negative response. It was done by one of the two things, intent or neglect. I am taking leave from going to these commission meetings. I hope that we'll be able to help you on the commission as good has been accomplished from all our input. I'm going to do research to familiarize if the state and federal laws have been violated because of intent or neglect. Please don't be surprised if your actions are challenged. The complacency of ADA by your administration will be one of the major questions needing to be addressed. What shares among our disabilities? Permit me from speaking because what I might say will have to be explained. Not starting at the regular time, one time, as in the yearly reorganization of the commission's rules. A lack of communication between the constituents that is necessary for a healthy relationship. I am not shy about my communication with you. I expect the same from you. We need to maintain the trust of the people that put their trust in you. Thank you.
Move on to our consent agenda. Today, our consent agenda consists of the meeting minutes for February 15th and to solicit bids for tires. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Dickinson?
Yes. Our first item of business is to consider special use permit, application 2210-2003, to allow for the construction and operation of an electric substation on approximately 13.166 acres in an A1 agriculture zoning district, commonly known as 2200 Texas Road. Just for the audience to know, our order of business this morning, we're going to allow Pat Toth, who is our planning and zoning director. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
to present the topic, then we're going to allow the applicant to speak, and then any of the public that would like to talk will be allowed to speak at that time. So, Pat, take it away.
Okay, we're going to start with 2210-2003, and this is a proposal for a substation. As you mentioned, there are a few items that I would like to go over. Speaking of the zoning, it is going to be considered an A1, and this is allowed as kind of like a situation where it doesn't meet the 40-acre requirements. However, there is a provision in our zoning regulations that allow for things like communication towers, water towers, or substations, typically utility-based, to not have to meet the minimal size requirements for the A1. So we are going to continue using the A1, and that allows for the substation to fall within that use under a special use permit. We're looking at the 13 acres off of a parent parcel of 137 acres. So it'll be broken off once it is subdivided and cut off for Evergy's purposes. There was one change from what was approved or recommended for approval from the Planning Commission to now. If you look at your agenda items, it actually falls under the conditions. If you look at condition number 10, we actually changed the word, and I just want to make sure that we got this on the record to be as transparent as possible. Number 10 did read, special use permit shall be null and void by operation of law if the special use permit has not been initiated and utilized. And we changed that to or utilize, because the intent is once they start construction, then we are in good shape as far as that 1 year deadline. If you continue reading, it gives them the 1 year deadline to get this thing started. We look at it as the starting of once they start moving dirt, we're good. We've initiated the construction process. With the word and, it kind of made it, if they're not utilizing it to its full, if it's not completed as a project, then it would be null and void, and that's not what we're shooting for. So we just cleaned it up a little bit, but I wanted you guys to understand that we did change it from what was approved to what we're looking at now. This was voted upon at the Planning Commission, and it was recommended for approval with a 5-2 and 1 abstaining vote. There was a a petition filed on this application. And so for approval, we are going to require a 4 out of 5 vote for approval. Otherwise, it just fails by default. I believe that Evergy is going to be here to give a presentation on their project, give you some more details that I wouldn't really be an expert in as far as the actual substation itself and why they're located in that place and what kind of things they're up against to make it work. And then I believe there's some other people in the public that may have a word or two to want to speak on the permit itself. So that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions?
In your finding, I know, Pat, you wasn't here when the original ones were wrote up, but it says in there, there's no evidence to suggest the request will determinately affect nearby property value. And that is a true statement as far as the appraiser's concerned.
Correct.
But that's not a true statement when it comes to resale value of the property. I know the appraiser talked to him, and he said on utilities like this, they don't determine changes on the county's side of the value of the property.
Sure.
But it does affect the selling price. Because I asked another private appraiser, and I asked 3 realtors, and they all give me the same statement. Yes, the county would keep the same amount of money on it, but it would be harder to sell and they would be and they'd be taking away some of their property rights also
Okay.
by it happening. Did they provide you, I know they provided a survey. Did they have an approved county, signed off on the county survey?
Let me take a look at that real quick. I don't know if Kenny ever signed off on it when he was here or not.
No. I went down and checked.
Okay,
They
so I
didn't
do not
even
believe
apply.
we've approved one yet.
They didn't apply, they haven't filed it with the downtown.
Well,
With
have
red-
they
My
actually
suspicion
purchased
is
the
they
land?
want to get through the special use before they spend the money to survey. all
I
the
just asked.
land. Yeah, right, and I believe that would be
I mean,
the,
it doesn't make the county hasn't approved the
Correct.
survey yet.
you are correct.
I mean, they've asked, they showed one, they had a surveyor that did it, but we actually haven't seen an approved stamp of the county surveyor, that he approves the survey.
I believe that is correct.
And something else on here, it's really strange to me, after all the years being here and then on planning board, there's no requirement for screening along the road screening with an adjacent house right across the road.
And that's something maybe we could revisit when we do look at our zoning codes, once we do our comprehensive plan
I
down
know
the
we,
line. But at
always
this
before,
point,
with the last 3 or 4 I can remember you guys ran through, it was all required.
we would put it as a specific condition. In this case, the report was created before I was taking hold of it.
All right.
I'm-
We still can add
We
it.
could add,
We still can add it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You
Yeah,
can
something
add
that
whatever conditions you feel
We can
required.
discuss that with the applicant, right?
And, yeah, and if you have other conditions you would like to add, that's
Yeah.
part of
Well, I
what we're
just
doing.
know, I don't think it's quite fair that we ask others to do it and we don't ask them to do it.
Absolutely.
And I
know-
understand they're gonna put screening around the fence area, but this thing is gonna be 8 to 10 times bigger than the one up here on 59 Highway.
Okay.
If it's 3 acres, because that thing's only a quarter of an acre. Well, that thing's gonna be huge. It's gonna be big as this building.
Maybe those are all things we can discuss with the applicant.
But, I don't think it's fair that we make the others do a screening. I mean, if there wasn't a house right across the road from it, so what, But there is a house right across the road from it.
so Don, we were going to let Pat,
There was one more thing I wanted to add, that we are requiring, or we were recommending a traffic study done. Dave had brought up that we want to ensure that traffic is not impeded by the entrances that are going to be added on this. As we were discussing conditions, I did want to throw that in there as well. So,
And another thing, has Evergy got an easement to go over the water line easement with their road going into the facility?
I have not seen the survey with that yet, but it would be something that would be required.
No, I think, because I know the first meeting you had, Evergy had not even talked to the water district. They had already applied their plans, but they hadn't even talked to the water district about putting a road over their
Correct.
easement.
Sure.
I thought that was kind of strange also.
well, before we get into our questions and all that discussion, let's
Yeah.
move, let's keep it in order here.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
anything else for you, Pat? Do we have the
I
applicant
think
here?
all of these questions may be answered by the next group that comes up to present, but I don't have these specific answers because I haven't followed up, and that's on me, and I'll make sure that doesn't happen again.
Let's bring Evergy up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
wait. No, if I can, I can ask more later.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I know Mr. Hornbuckle, at the first hearing, when it was turned down,
Okay,
planning board one of the planning board members, Mr. Hornbuckle, asked for them to give him 2 months to come back with a better plan and a better solution. Am I right?
I believe that's how it transpired, yes.
What did they change?
I would have to call Kenny and
Pat,
ask.
how about we let Evergy come up? Because
Okay.
all of Don's questions are better asked of Evergy.
Yeah,
So
not Pat, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're the ones
Are
that,
we gonna get the same presentation the board got?
I don't know what Evergy is going to present.
we'll let them do it. We'll see what they
Okay.
have. You see, we have a lot of questions, though.
I feel like I'm on the spot already.
Yeah, well,
We did have a presentation. I don't know if it got loaded. If it did not, we have, a computer that we could hook up real quick? I don't
Yeah,
know.
however you want to do it. Dustin, why don't you help them out?
We have a way to hook it up? Because it's going to explain a little bit of some of the questions that you guys had. I can go into part of it before the presentation. Yeah, we are proposing a 310 by 320 substation on the 13 acres. It's not the entire 13 acres. There was a little bit of confusion when we first came up. It's just
So
the
a football field by a football field,
ish, yeah.
basically.
Yeah, but it's just that, it's not the entire site, it's just the substation spot within there. I will address your questions first because I'm waiting on them. The survey was a preliminary survey just for preliminary design for the submittal. It is not the final survey. We don't go into that final survey or do the final stuff until we know that we have the site approved. If we,
Don't own the land yet.
Yeah, we don't
And I
own the
wouldn't
land,
do
so-
that kind of work to build a house on somebody else's land.
exactly, so we do an initial survey with the property owners, you know, with the option with the property owner, we do an initial survey. That'll give us the topography and stuff like that, that we can actually put where our substation would likely go. When and/or if we get approval, then we go down the final route of doing the final survey and filing it with the county at closing and all the other stuff. So all that would come later. I understand it seems like we should do it all up front, but when we have to go through the approval process to do and to put in that much labor into the front of it, sometimes wouldn't,
Right.
it wouldn't
Yeah,
make sense
absolutely.
because, I mean, if we do get denied, which we obviously hope we don't, then we would have expended all that energy up front. And it would have been, we'd have to do it somewhere else at the same point. Apparently they're not ready yet.
What about screening?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Would you
We would
be
be up-
open to
yes,
a
yes.
reasonable screening requirement?
Yes, yes. We do masonry walls, we do vegetation.
With that much site, you'd have quite a bit of options, wouldn't you? With that big of a site, the 13 acres and only using the
Right.
9,000 square foot,
Right.
10,000?
And that's part of the reason, so when we looked for the site, I'll go through the criteria while he's getting that presentation up. Our planning said that we needed a substation due to reliability in the area. It's a 59-mile circuit. If part of it goes out, a lot of people lose power. So if we have another substation, it increases redundancy in the area and it increases reliability. Planning said, whenever we were given the direction of a substation, they said to put it within a mile of that intersection, those three transmission lines, which is at Texas and Rock Creek Road. The distribution lines, I'm sorry. They said within a mile of there is the best site. So we looked within the mile. And if we find a suitable site and a willing property owner, we would proceed with that. If we didn't find a willing site and a willing property owner, we would look outside of the 1 mile radius because we found somebody that had a site and they were willing to sell and the site was very suitable for what we're proposing to do. That's where we stopped. We did look with different sites within the 1 mile radius, but a lot of them were eliminated due to size, topography, floodplain issues, tree removal, environmental aspects that we like to try to avoid as well. And I have a presentation to go over that would explain where we're at. Okay. Running it. So, the next slide, whoever's
And bring
doing
you
it.
a clicker.
Oh, thanks.
You
Okay.
are in control.
Oh, that's never a good thing. So this is the site we're looking at. You guys are all very familiar with the site. The current 345 lines originate at the intersection of Rock Creek and Texas Road. It'll allow that to be subdivided into 3 circuits very easily. Reduce the number of customers impacted, which I've already explained. And this actually shows does this have a pointer? That doesn't work, okay. The 3 distribution lines that come through and then the substation site. This is our transmission line that I know will be brought up later that would actually need to be tied into the substation somehow. But having the distribution lines right there is very favorable. And there's an engineer that is a lot smarter than I am and can talk about why that is more favorable than moving the substation site.
While you're on that.
Yes.
And because I know a lot of the talk right now is about the substation itself. But a lot of what we're going to hear from the public is where the lines are, proposed lines are going to go. And do you have an idea? Can we have an idea where?
We don't have it planned out per se. We know it has to get from these 3 lines into the substation and then this line into the substation. That's where we know we know some more desirable routes. We don't have a route picked. We don't have a route selected. We haven't started talking to landowners about possible routes. What we typically do, or we always do, is we get the site, we get that secured prior to, like I said earlier, expending all of the energy into doing routes and doing the surveys and everything that would go into selecting the actual route. There's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes of getting a transmission line and distribution lines into that substation site. And to expend an effort on a site that might not work, it's not feasible, and it's not, honestly, it's not a smart business practice to do. So once we get the site selected, then everything else comes down the road from there. We do initial designs and stuff like that of what we think it's going to be. We know it will fit in that side. We just don't know where everything's going to come into it until we know we have that spot. That makes sense? Okay. This is the preliminary site plan with the rough survey of it and where we think it will fit on there, the proposed locations of the driveways, which can be modified if needed, given a traffic study, if that one is required. This is where we've proposed to put it on that property. And this is where we go through the threshold. So during the initial Planning Commission meeting, they wanted to know why we picked this site and some of the criteria behind it. So we went back through what we did previously before we picked the site and kind of put it into a slideshow. All this work was done prior to signing an option. So we looked within, so the criteria is within greater than 5 acres within a mile of that intersection, and then willing seller. We always like to have a willing seller. It usually makes the process go a lot easier. And then we look at constructability criteria, floodplains, wetlands, the topography of the site. We don't want a site that slopes significantly. There's a lot of dirt work, a lot of expense, a lot of stabilization that has to go on. Engineer's a lot smarter than me, he'll explain that. Tree coverage, we don't like to remove trees. There's some endangered species issues in the area. And then access from roads. So these are the sites we looked at. These are the landowners that we were told from real estate were contacted about possibly using their site. And I guess I explained everything. The yellow is the property boundary. And then I've explained what the lines are. And within 1 mile, greater than 5 acres. So you'll notice some of the hash marks go away. I was trying to figure out what was going on. It's been a minute. Some of the hash marks go away, so they fall out of the criteria. So we had all of them. Some of them fell out because they were smaller than 5 acres, so they wouldn't work for our site. So this one is outside of the floodplain or floodway. We will not put a substation within a floodplain or a floodway. You don't build homes there typically. We're not going to build a substation there if we can avoid it. And then minimal wetland impacts. And then we added in the topography and the tree clearing, possible minimal tree clearing required, and we came down to less sites there. And then we wanted it to be accessible via Rock Creek Road because it was a paved road. And we have these possible 9 sites, and then the reasons why we did or didn't keep them. And if you want me to, I can go through every reason if you would like. I don't know if you guys have this presentation or not in front of you. But basically, Mr. Spencer is the one that we selected. He was a willing seller. I believe he wasn't quite willing at the beginning, and he went back to him, and we ended up selecting his site. He was the willing landowner. I believe several of these were eliminated because they were not willing landowners, and some of the sites were less desirable. They were too narrow or too small, or there was a homestead on them already. So we try to avoid those sites. And that is the end of this presentation. I will have Scott Jemison come up and kind of explain some stuff, and then we'll go through questions after that, if that works for you guys, unless you have some right now.
How many of those people do you have numbers on that you actually contact and deal with?
So I am going with what our real estate department said. We've had a little bit of turnover in our real estate department, but let me see. We had one that said, we tried to contact Mr. Underwood, no response. We tried to contact property number 9, firm no from the owner. We eliminated this one because there was a homestead. We kept Mr. Schultz's properties, and it looks like Mr. Spencer's properties. So Mr. Spencer and Mr. Schultz are the only properties that were viable.
I mean, you're just giving this presentation, probably don't know a lot of it, but would it be simpler and cheaper, probably the guy back there will have to answer me, if both lines were on the same side of Rock Creek Road?
Both distribution
The
lines?
Rock Creek line runs on the power station side now. If the line was on the other side and the transmission, what you gotta run to is on the other side, wouldn't it be more cheaper, less expensive if both lines were on the same side of the road?
Yep. Sure. Scott Jemison, Evergy.
Hello, Scott Jemison, Evergy Transmission Engineer. And then cool. Apologize in advance, I'm not a public speaker, I'm the guy behind the desk. I've asked Jessica to kick me if I go off on tangents, because I can talk about this stuff for a long time. Definitely appreciate the questions. So we did look, I think she said, right now the substation design is a 310 by 320. Right now we're looking at it square. And so to answer the question on the transmission costs.
Would it be cheaper if both lines were on you didn't have to jump the road?
Sure, and that's a great question. Short answer, it'll be about the same, because what we're gonna do, I gotta try to use a pointer, sorry, I'm one of those like hand guys. So the only other really viable option that we could find in this area is likely number 5, this narrow strip here. The problem with that narrow strip is when we got the preliminary survey, there's a water easement that runs like 20, 30 feet, and I've actually got the preliminary survey I can show you. It runs outside of the road right away, so what that does is it squishes the substation. So the substation basically has to be like, instead of being a square, it has to be a narrow stretch. And what we're gonna do is we're cutting in this 161 transmission line to Brown line. We have to cut it in 2 directions. And so when we squish it, like when we squish the substation site so that it fits in this small rectangle, basically what it's gonna force us to do is it would force one line to go directly south or into the sub. That would be cheaper. But then the next line, there's not enough spots to put both termination points facing north. So what we would have to do is either the left or the east or the west line would go south, but then we would have to find a separate termination point. And right now it's looking like we would probably have to cut in here, affecting the other property, come in from the west and then come in from the north. And every time you put a corner on it, you're adding a lot of cost, because what we're going to go in with is steel poles with pier foundations. We don't like to work with those guy wires anymore, the ropes that go into the ground, because they're a much larger area disturbance, and if a guy wire goes down, the pole goes down. So we like to have single steel poles that we would go in. So it would be about the same cost because of how we would have to squish the substation into the smaller parcel, because we would have to have had to avoid a water line that runs. And man, I have a really shaky hand, I'm sorry. It's like 30 feet off the road right away. I've got the survey drawing here, but we were looking at that, we were considering the routes, and we were like, okay, well, we could probably make this work, but something that's, I think, mentioned here, we know that property 5 is not a willing seller here, and that is something that's important.
So you've already surveyed the property across the road?
Correct, but I actually think it is stamped. I've got a copy of it, and that's where we found the water line. And we kind of because of we know we had reason to believe that this wasn't a willing seller, and I think he later agreed with us that he's not willing to sell here. And when we looked at it, we were like, okay, this isn't as simple because there's a water easement kind of running through that property that would force us to like squish our substation and start complicating it and adding more costs because it would have to get longer and we'd have to start looking at different routes.
Hearing you right, it also moved the transmission line closer to the houses?
Sorry, can you say that again?
That Site 5, which isn't a willing seller anyways, but to use it, you'd also have to move that west transmission line closer to the houses?
Potentially, we might be able to squeeze it. We might be able to squeeze it about the same. Like we might be able to cut in and then over. But it's one of those where when we identified the property that we did have a willing seller, we were like, okay, now that we've got a site, we know that they're willing to work with us. Let's start thinking about the routes here. So what Jessica said.
Back to your question, yes, there are houses closer if we put a substation on.
Oh, yeah, the substation itself would be closer to
Would be closer to
houses,
houses.
because we would have to like
I
squeeze
believe
it in,
that's
right?
what you're asking.
Sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, the substation would be squished in and very close to this house number 4 and this house number, on number 6. So the substation would be squished in, but it would be closer just because it has to take up more space on this property 5 here. And then I wanted to speak a little bit too, just to answer questions, and I love explaining things. I'm sorry, I'm an engineer. But this green property line here, the reason it's so big compared to what we need, because really the 300 by 300 is about 2.25 acres. Part of that is the site that we really liked is kind of on this this west side here, because what's not shown is the topography. This is actually a pretty darn flat spot, and I've got topography on the preliminary survey. And so there were negotiations back and forth because we didn't want this area because it slopes down. And basically, the more slope you have, the more disturbance you have, because we have to make this substation flat. We want our equipment to be kind of at the same level. We want to have good drainage. And so whenever there's slope, we don't want to build on that because that adds an order of magnitude cost. It's cheaper to get a little more real estate to save on construction costs, because real estate's usually like at least about 10% or 10% of the construction cost, if not lower than that. So we were like, okay, well, if the seller is willing to sell, we did some negotiation and they were willing to sell if we bought this part of the property too. We have no plans to use that property because it's not appealing. It's sloped, but the cost difference, it made sense to add a little bit more real estate to save on the cost, because then we can put the substation in a flat spot.
Mr. Spencer dictated that we have to buy it if we're going to purchase. We have to
Correct,
purchase
yeah.
All the way to the corner.
Yeah, and that's why
Cleared
there's
it off.
13 acres, is just because we discussed and negotiated getting a quadrant rather than like a little square that's surrounded by the property. He wanted the quadrant to be taken. And then to explain the 1 mile radius a little bit better, so what Jessica alluded to, this project was directed by what we call our transmission planning group. These are the guys that are like behind the scenes, looking on the big screen. Their sole job is to look at the grid, look at the health of the grid, look at what's happening. They're constantly simulating different scenarios, and they found a point of reliability issue within this area, because all 3 of these pink lines right now, we call those sub-transmission lines. Those are 34.5 kV lines. They're not the lines that feed the homes. They're the lines that feed the substations that then have lines that feed the homes. All of these are the same circuit right now. So the point of the project is to put a substation here so that we separate these 3 circuits so that they act completely independent of each other. So that if something happens further on in the east or further in the west, further in the south, if something happens, only one line is affected rather than the entire system go down here. Because, if a pole goes down right now, theoretically, this whole T section of line could go down. So it's a reliability thing. We want to separate them so that we have better reliability and can better maintain our lines during operations and failures. And so with the 1 mile radius, basically we have to get back to this, what we call the junction point. So the further we put the substation out, it means that we have to rebuild the 34.5, not just one 34.5 system lines, but we have to build a brand new 34.5 system, because so just for example, if we built the substation like here, we would have to rebuild the existing line along Rock Creek Road to probably continue east, but then we would have to build a brand new line either south or north. It would have to be separate because the project's purpose is to separate the circuits completely so that from a circuit standpoint, they operate completely independent of each other. We would have to build a brand-new line back to this line, to the second line to feed south, because it's a reliability. We're separating out the circuits. So basically, the further we move west, the further we move east, we have to build another line to connect up to this junction point, and so that we feed the south line while also rebuilding the original line back to the junction point. So really, this corner point, this what we call the junction point, is like any property kind of in this area is the best spot, because then we don't have to rebuild the existing distribution line and the sub-transmission line, and we don't have to build more of a new line because it's literally right there on the property that we're abutting. So basically, some of the advantages of having this property that we have right here is we can get our lines back to this junction point without having to rebuild and affect multiple landowners. Any questions with that?
Now, the property across the road, you already have a 100-foot easement on the backside of that property.
Right here?
Yeah.
That is correct, and that's for the existing transmission.
So if you're gonna go across, they're gonna take a 100-foot easement in two directions out of that property.
We would likely take an easement, and it would either, so we don't have the final route, kind of what Jessica is explaining. There's an order of operations. You want to know the site, and you want it approved, and you want to have confidence that we're going to be able to build there before we start routing. But likely, we would either go with option 5 or option 3 and do a route here and cut in, or a route here and cut in. And so I can't speak to the exact easements because we haven't designed it yet.
Have you surveyed both those properties?
Right now, we've surveyed this one, and I don't believe we've surveyed number 3. I drank a lot of coffee this morning.
Now,
Sure.
can you say that the Spencer Farms was your number one option?
Yes, and
Okay, if they would have turned you down, what was your number 2 option?
Number one option for a substation was not Spencer Farms,
Oh,
but he meant for a substation, I believe.
oh, well, I mean, that I thought was our option, that oh, sorry.
I'm Spencer, they both start with S, it's been a long day already.
Yeah, Spencer.
Yes, and what we did when the SUP originally told us to go back, we had several in-person meetings, and we came up with this development, and we did have a lot of conversations with the project team and people that aren't here, and we were like, okay, well, let's double check that this is the right spot, and we did kind of go through it again and go, okay, well, here's the pros, here's the cons, and we ended up back at the same spot, that the
I know,
parcel.
but did you have a number 2?
Number 2,
If he turned you down?
probably.
We had several others that we had contacted. Got a firm no, got no response from this one, so number 8 and number 9, we were also looking at as well. But like I said, we got a firm no, and then didn't get a call back. Spencer was the one that was willing to work with us.
After several conversations?
Yes, we talked to him several times.
So.
That's what, no, I just wanted to know if you had a plan, a backup plan, that it would work somewhere else if needed.
So when we found this, we know that there's other properties here, but in terms of a willing seller, we right now have only Spencer. We've, to my knowledge, our real estate department had contacted others, and we had either received no response or firm no's. And I can't speak too much more to that because I'm not on the real estate side. It's more, we get relayed what they tell us, basically. They have some agents and contractors on the field. So right now, our main option is the number 1 property, the Spencer property. And then we would have to consider, you know, if this fails, we would have to go back and consider other options. But right now, with having the willing seller, we really wanted to fight for what we have, this spot that seems ideal for us. It is the most, we believe this to be the most cost-effective for ratepayers because it's right next to the junction point, so we don't have to build more, and it's on a flat spot, so we don't have to spend a lot of money and do a lot of earthwork disturbances and environmental disturbances because the site's already kind of flat where we've got it. So that's one big thing that we look at here, or what we look at when we're looking at properties.
And once we get, that's
until we have to work on another one, which we hopefully don't have to, but that's the site that we work on and put our resources into.
One of my concerns is that in November, when you came and there was some protest and so that you were asked to come back in 2 months and look, see, what else is there? What else is there? And when you came back in January, it was not what else is there, it was, this is why. You know, so what they wanted to know was, what else is there? And you didn't come back with that. You came back with, this is why we chose this, and these are more reasons why we chose this, but we wanted to know what else is, what else?
What else that would meet these requirements?
I mean, if we had to expand it out.
I think what we're going to hear suggested is looking at Oregon and Rock Creek Road, which is about 2 miles to the west.
Sure, and I can speak to, I do have some notes there about why that's not a good option, or why that's not, you know, what we consider to be the feasible option
Give us your
here.
thoughts on that.
Sure, so I actually have a couple of things here. Sorry, I didn't put this in the spreadsheet. First thing, is this the, am I allowed to come up here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
So
You got the
is
sheriff.
this what you're meaning? Okay.
That's Oregon
So
and
yeah,
Rock Creek
this,
Road.
This property here that I think Mr. Scholes identified as a potential willing seller, one, we don't know that Spencer is willing to sell that property because it appears to be more of an agricultural rather than a hay field. So
It's
one,
crop ground instead of
yeah, so
pasture.
crop ground is a little more sensitive to sell. In my experience,
But
you get better.
If he was,
If he wants, exactly.
if he
And-
was willing to sell, tell us about.
Okay, yeah, and definitely point of speculation, because, yeah,
Yeah.
if he's not a willing seller, it defeats the purpose. But, so first thing, this is through Google Earth, you look at the slope, you can kind of tell because even on the imagery, you can see like these terraces. So one, that earthwork disturbance, you can tell that this is a watershed with a pond. We would have to do significant earthwork. We would have to either cut from the existing slope and move it here to make it flat, or we would have to bring in a ton of earthwork trucks. And I'm thinking we would have to do that because at least initial probing, it appears that there's like shallow rock in a lot of these areas. And it's really tough to blast out shallow rock, crush it up, and then make it soil. Because it just takes a lot of costs, a lot of disturbances, a lot of environmental permitting, stuff like that. So we don't even know.
It's not flat.
Yeah, and in the environmental permitting work, things are getting a lot stricter in terms of like, when you disturb things, you know, there's a lot more regulations, a lot more proof of the pudding. Like, if
You
we
bet.
were to take this route, we would have to permit to higher regulatory authorities and go, okay, well, why did you choose this route? And if we chose this route, it would be because, hey, another entity, government entity told us not to.
What else besides the topography?
Yep, I'm glad you asked. Let me switch images here. And I'm sorry, did you want to see that? I 100% realized.
I'll take
We
it.
can pass them
Okay,
around.
yeah, sorry, I selfishly just went to one and changed. So another thing, so this is what I saw from Mr. Schultz.
How about, I'll take
Where's the
one,
substation?
and then if you want to read off the other, I can pass this
Yeah.
around, and you maybe go back to that
We have
mic
that
so
one, I think.
everybody can hear.
Okay, it's the same one. I don't have another copy.
This
of
is
it,
the
but I
substation?
kind of know it.
Oh, okay.
We have it.
Is it Texas right?
Yeah, this is the
Let's let her
Let them
finish.
finish, yeah. We're getting two conversations.
Okay, so that doesn't show where the actual substation would be.
show it right here.
This is what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's where it's going.
Okay, now I'm catching up. So it's directly in line driveway with the property right across the road.
It's a little bit, what direction is that? West of it. It's kind of like here-ish. So like the substation fence for the eastmost side is going to be around here. We actually have we might have another drawing that better shows that from where we would be next to the house. I think.
There's been I know another thing I was gonna ask. Yeah, I know it's something they haven't planned in the past, but I think it's something they need to. There's been 80 substations in the United States basically terrorized and shot at and shot up and closed down. What are you guys doing? This is a new one, and you can prepare from day one. What are you preparing to do to help prevent that?
That's a great question, and so I speak mostly for the transmission and routing side of things. I know that I work with substations for years, and is actually something that, they're in the works right now with looking into security standards, because like the stuff in Washington and the other states where people have been shooting equipment, that has triggered a lot of internal alarms and external regulatory alarms. So there are a lot of conversations going on. Right now, I can tell you that, the substation is gonna have a fence, we're gonna have cameras monitoring, we're gonna have, we might have screening. I can't speak to anything else right now because I'm not the substation standards, but I can tell you that they're looking into it because it is. Internally, the security, because of these recent
I mean, 'cause it's gonna be huge, so it's gonna be a big target.
Evergy realizes that, and as a company, we are looking into that. It's obviously in the earlier stages. We have changed some of our standard fencing design to be more of a fence outside of the mason, like the precast walls. We proposed chain link on this, and our new standard is more harder to penetrate that anyway, or there is obviously the precast at this point. Company-wide, I can't speak for what they're gonna decide. I know it's being internally discussed.
Yep.
It's gonna take a little while to figure out what our route is. I mean, we're aware of the problem and we're looking
Or the
at it.
potential problem, yeah.
Or the
Because
potential.
it's on the rise
Yeah,
statistically, yeah. But great question. I wish I could give you more, but it's more of a high-level internal discussion with the standards group. We just enact the standards of the engineers that look at that further.
So back to kind of the idea of an alternate and what that,
So the alternate route that was proposed.
Can we get you guys in front of the mic when you talk, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're.
Yep. So, do you have that on your pad, just so that I can take a?
I'm,
I apologize. I just want to make sure that I'm looking at it right and speaking correctly. Okay, so the route between, what is that, southwest of Oregon Road and Rock Creek Road, if you guys can see it on your iPads through like Google Earth imagery or something.
even just another site, I guess, not necessarily this one, because we don't even know if he'd
This
be
is
willing
a-
to sell, but another
Yeah.
area
And
that
this-
wasn't as built up, and what are some things that would be pros and cons? What are your
Sure.
thoughts on that?
So this is still a good example because we have to consider topography, which I kind of already discussed with the slopes. Two, crop land versus hayland is a big issue. So right now, a lot of the other land is used for crop. So if we had to route the transmission line, we would basically, in order to install the transmission line, it takes matting, it takes big equipment, concrete trucks. We would have to go through cropland more than likely to do that. Especially on this route to Oregon Road and Rock Creek Road. And the route that was proposed by Mr. Scholes has additional road crossings. And then another point of speculation and kind of alluding to the challenge of working in the utility field is it no longer becomes a Mr. Scholes problem, but then it becomes a Sunflower Farms problem. It becomes a Dwayne and Rhonda Legel problem. It starts to impact other landowners, and what's to say that they are just as passionate and just as, in disagreement with landowners. So the advantage to the site that we have is we saw it impacts one landowner. We went out on site. It is a hayfield. We went out, we said, oh, this actually looks pretty good because we're not, detrimentally damaging property. It's not cropland. We've got the ability, a clear space through a hayland that's not even fenced, that we could then build this. This impacts one property. So it really does seem like an ideal location, because something that Evergy is obligated to do, I'm obligated to do as an Evergy engineer, is I am obligated to provide the cost-effective, the safe, reliable, cost-effective, and sustainable solution. So,
What do you usually plug in for an engineer's estimate on
Sure.
a mile of sub-transmission line?
so classic engineer's answer, it depends. But for this one, I did talk to our sub-transmission group who would do the design. They quoted for a recent project, it was about half a mile. It was around 700,000 to 800,000. Granted, there were some other unique equipment that was on that line, so ballpark about $1 million to $1.5 million a mile. So the further you get,
You're
the
looking
more
for redundancy, you have to go back and pick up 2 of the 3 circuits.
Exactly. So we would have to rebuild the existing one that has the distribution that's feeding the homes, and then we would have to build a new one back to that junction point. And
Assuming your site was east, west, or south. you could pick-
Correct. We would have to build another line. And right now, the existing line is either in road right-of-way in some spots, other spots it's in a new easement, but it's a narrow easement just for that line. So that second line, we would have to get new easement, or we would have to put it on the other side of the road, which means that we would have to put more poles in front yards, we would have to cut down more trees, we would have to impact other property owners, and then it becomes the downward spiral of other landowners having the passionate disagreement, they don't want the easement. So it domino affects the further you go, the more impacts to landowners that we have. The more expensive the route gets, the more that impacts ratepayers such as yourselves, such as myself as a resident of Kansas. This impacts me. So we really are obligated to provide, what we deem to be the least impactful, the cost-effective solution for the grid, for the community. And we took a look again, we looked at our criteria, and we were like, this route that we're proposing, it just makes sense because it's at the point we don't have to build new lines. We're touching one landowner as opposed to more, and that's
Get your lines up until you get your lines up, because so this is my problem with it is, so you can drive down Rock Creek Road and it's A1, agriculture.
Sure.
Huge swaths of agriculture, and the place that you picked has a lot of residential. If you have 10 acres and you put a line across it and it's 100-foot easement through the middle of it, you basically can't use that 10, you just can't, you can't do anything with it.
That's a great point, that's a great question.
Can you go further and actually be, have agriculture, put it in the middle of, with agriculture? I mean, if you go a mile this way, it's big agriculture.
So again, at the expense of having to impact more landowners to get the distribution line back. And that's a great question. We would not propose to put our easement in the middle of the property. We would likely we like to hug the edges of properties. And when we do have easements, that does not mean that property owners do not have rights within that easement. The land can still be used for agricultural purposes. It can still be used as it is today for hay purposes. We design our lines to well exceed the bare minimum heights and electric codes. We like our lines to be, tall enough so that you can enjoy the land through agricultural equipment. You can put irrigation systems under it, that kind of thing. We design our new lines so that they're going to be tall enough so that landowners can still use the land. When we obtain an easement, we are not taking the property. We are not taking away all of the rights of the property owner. Contrary to what a lot of people would think, you can still work on the land. You can still use it. The one stipulation is that we don't permit buildings within it, and that's for the safety of the property owner and the safety of the public. We don't want people installing things tall within our transmission easements because transmission lines are extremely powerful. They need to be tall. They need easement so that we can have the safe clearances, so that the public is safe, so that the landowners are safe, so that the grid is reliable. So that would be the stipulation. We would likely need a 100-foot easement, plus or minus. We haven't really looked at it in a detail yet until we get the confirmation. But we wouldn't be taking the entire property because that property 5 is about a little over 400 feet wide per the preliminary survey. Actually, that might actually be a survey because it was surveyed and stamped. But so we're not going to take the whole strip, And there's also an existing water easement that has even more, I would assume, I don't have the easement, I would assume has more restrictive rights because we permit land disturbance in our easements. If people want to install, like a mailbox, they want to install a driveway, if cities want to install roads, we work back and forth with a lot of external entities to develop within our easements, provided that, they don't install something typically 10 feet or taller in our easements because we want to make sure that we've got safe clearances. Outside of that, the landowners can still use the land. It's not like hey, you cannot do anything in here. We are open to modifications within our easements because we understand that they're property owners. They still want to do things with their land. It's just we can't allow buildings for the safety of the public. And in this area, there are still, taking a 100-foot strip on a 400-foot property of land still gives them, 300 feet to put a building. Don't quote me on the 100 feet because I can't confirm if it's going to be 100 or plus or minus. Generally, it's about 100, at most 150 for this kind of configuration. We still need to look at the details on routing it in. But the point being, we would put it on the edge of, we typically put our easements on the edge of properties nowadays rather than trying to put them in the middle because that's, frankly not neighborly if you don't
I
need
got
to.
one question.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, you got a willing property owner as far as the substation itself.
Yep.
You have, and we'll hear from them, possibly some owners that are not willing to do, to the north, say from A to B, straight north. Is there any way you can run your line down to the east and back up and back over and get back to where you're at the same place? Or?
We could at the expense of adding millions of dollars to our ratepayers. And that's something that we have to consider because every dollar that we spend, gets put back on the ratepayers. So we are obligated to be cost conscious about our projects. And in my experience with routing transmission lines, I have yet to work on a project where everybody's willing. Everybody wants safe, reliable power, but boy, when you start proposing things in people's properties, it becomes a different story. They go, oh no, not my property.
Then you'd be building a second transmission line
Effectively.
that runs parallel to that one
We have to get from this.
across that many more landowners.
From this line down to our substation.
Yep.
We wouldn't do 2 lines, or would we do 2 lines?
I think the question was, would you be willing to look to the east to jump across the road, say somewhere around number 9, but then you'd be running a transmission line parallel to the existing one.
And having to require easements on other property owners, which then domino affects the property owners, the other affected property owners can come back and say, hey, not on my property. And that's one of the challenges that I find with the utility business is, no matter where we go, we can't make everybody happy. And it's our job to remain impartial and consider the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. We look at what impacts what our routes are proposing. We kind of list it out, and then we make a decision from the objective facts that we can pull. And the facts are, the route that we're proposing affects one landowner. It affects what is currently a hayfield going into a willing seller that is also a hayfield. It is not agricultural land, or it's not used for crops, sorry. It may still be zoned for agricultural. And it's right at the junction point so that we don't have to build a brand new sub-transmission line back to the junction point and get a whole new set of easements that affect a whole new range of property owners. So really, this is honestly one of the best spot that I can think of is this spot that we have because the property that we negotiated, the preliminary property that we've negotiated butts up right to the junction point so that we don't have to build out more lines in the future because it's right there. So we can just use the property that we have to route the lines to connect back up to those three separate lines.
Okay, we're going to let you sit down
Yep.
now.
No, appreciate your patience with me.
So our constituents, the ones that have signed up to public speak, we're going to let you talk now. You've heard their presentation. I'm just going to give you have a limit of 5 minutes and one time, okay? So if somebody says something else, you can come back up. So when you do come up, if you will state your name and address, and you have a one-time presentation, okay? And if you didn't sign up and you want to talk, you still can, so FYI.
Our first one is Troy Beach.
Good morning. My name's Troy Beach. I'm at 4073 Rock Creek Road. That would be number 4. I am right across the road from this. I wasn't able to make the first meeting. I was out of town working, but what's hard for me is that's my front yard. I do cleanups for different power companies. I've been in transformer stations. I've cleaned oil out of transformer stations. I bought the property, because it's up on top of the hill. I wanted the view. All I heard today was it's going to impact one property owner, which is me. And, I'm going to listen to the roaring of the transformer when I get home. You guys go home at night. I don't think you have a transformer sitting. I'm 1,400 foot will be from this transformer. And it just, I don't want to see it go in. And all I heard today was Evergy's, the guy sitting at the computer making the circle And, you know, it's gonna impact my neighbors. It's gonna impact, you know, the land. But I'm just saying, you know, I think that maybe you guys could have them look, you know, yeah, it may cost money to move it down. And, you know, also, it's on the hillside, which, you know, I don't know the impact of a release, but I hope we can get it, you guys, you know, could vote to get it moved. Thank you.
Dennis Schultz.
Morning. Dennis Schultz, 4087 Rock Creek Terrace. So I'd sent a couple of emails out. I appreciate you guys taking the time to look at it. Some of it was discussed here a little bit ago. I do want to make sure that we do recognize that the original vote in the zoning commissioning meeting was a vote of no. And they tabled it, come back a couple months later. And to your point earlier, Evergy didn't come back with another spot. They just came back with more reasons why they think this is the best spot. I mean, Evergy talks about a willing seller, but what all you know is they don't care about the surrounding landowners. It's obvious. It's obvious because they didn't contact anybody on the north side of that Rock Creek Road to talk about easements. I found out there was something going to be happening when I woke up one morning and there's a surveyor parked on my land. I mean, put yourselves into that, you know, somebody's parked on your land, what are you going to do? You're going to run them off. But I did. I ran them off, right? Even after I ran them off and Evergy contacted me, they still wouldn't tell me what was going on. I didn't find out what was happening until it came out in the zoning commission meeting minutes that it was going to be up for a vote, that what was going to happen across the road. You know, overhead lines, they're governed by a different set of standards. They don't have to have a special use permit for these overhead lines. Once they get this special use permit and they buy the land for this substation, they're going to eminent domain somebody's land to run their transmission lines across it. The three people north of this property have signed a petition. They don't want it. They will have to eminent domain somebody's land and take their land. And as you see by the maps, those are pretty small parcels of land. Now they're talking about 2 connections to that line, not just 1, 2. It's going to cut up. I mean, they're going to have 161,000 volts going between 2 houses. They can tell you they want it within a mile, but what they can't tell you is it won't work within 2 miles. They can tell you that they want it within a mile, but they can't tell you that it won't work if it's farther away. They didn't tell you today that it won't work. They've told you they don't want to, they don't like to, that it's going to cost them money. But they can't tell you that it won't work. It will work. They will separate the 3 circuits. They will have the reliability. And they will not affect 3 residents and cut up and totally condemn a 12-acre plot of land. If they truly want capacity, the second option I sent you guys this week makes a hell of a lot of sense. They could put a smaller substation. They could go east and west from Rock Creek, anywhere along Rock Creek. They could tie into the transmission lines down south of Greeley, put another smaller substation down there, feed the line going south. Guess what? They could use both substations to backfeed the other if one of them goes out. They have options. They have options, but they don't want to do it because it might cost them a little bit of money. It might be harder. They talk about typographical. They move dirt all the time. Moving dirt's not a problem. Making land flat is not a problem.
Mr. Schultz, you have 1 minute.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I just wanted you to get what you
Look,
wanted.
in closing, this is what it comes down to. Evergy has options. They have options that doesn't put a substation directly across from 3 properties, 2 of which built their house specifically to look across this prairie. One of them just talked about buying a house to look across this prairie. They have options that don't condemn small parcels of land. They have options that don't put 161,000 volts of electricity between 2 houses. It's not easy. They don't want to do it, but they can do it. They can't tell you it won't work. That's not what I heard today. They just told you they didn't want to. Thank you for your time.
Dana Thompson.
Hello, I'm Dana Thompson. I'm at 4080 Rock Creek Terrace. My house is right next to where the transmission lines are. I don't know if you remember the red line across the top. A few things I want to point out. I know Evergy had said the reason they chose this is because it's on that blacktop road. That blacktop road floods in Rantoul and at Rock Creek on the other side of Oregon. So if there is a storm where they have to get to this substation, it is harder because it's flooded. The Texas that runs along the Rock Road, it is not a great road, so it's hard for big trucks to get through there. That was brought up at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And I know another landowner talked about seeing it. This is going to obstruct the beautiful view that not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 homes will be seeing this. It's going to be right out their front windows. I know you guys are tired of hearing about windmills, but this was also brought up with the windmills. You know, you don't want to see it. We want to protect our beautiful landscape. And when all those homeowners chose to live in a rural area, they didn't expect to have a substation right out their front window. So I just hope that you guys keep that in mind, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Derek Schultz.
Morning. Derek Schultz, 4043 Rock Creek Road. I was the number 3 on that map. And if they try and go through my piece of ground, it won't fit. You guys have stipulations from property line to my house. Has to be within 100 foot or over 100 foot. They take 100 foot, it won't fit. Then it goes between my property and another property. If they go that route, that's 2 landowners that they'll have to go through to get the transmission lines there. Not only me, but my father's ground. The number 5 spot, if they try and take transmission line through that, they can't put it up next to the road because the water meter or the water line's there. So then they're gonna have to come off the road 30 foot and then another 100 foot. That's right down the middle of that piece of ground. You can't do nothing with it. Can't even build on it if you wanted to. I got 2 young boys and I'd sure like them to be able to build a house around our farm that my dad and I have been able to put together. And I don't want to look at it. I built my house to look across that prairie. Don't want anything over there. I mean, there's another piece of ground, 16 acres for sale, that is on the other side of Oregon Road. Yes, I know they have to build more lines to get the 34.5 down. But the transmission lines run on that same piece of property. They could buy that 16 acres and put it there. It wouldn't impact any homes. There's no homes that look at it. 16 acres for sale that they could buy, so evidently they didn't go talk to anybody. There just came up another piece of ground. It was on the south side of Rock Creek that just came up for sale. Evidently they didn't talk to them either. So they're just going for the easy button. I'd like you guys to keep those thoughts in mind and hope we can vote down. Thank you.
Chris Berger.
My name is Chris Berger. I'm at 900 Massachusetts in Lawrence. I'm an attorney. I represent Evergy. This is not just a business which is looking to create a place of business. This is a public utility which is obligated by state law to provide reliable, cost-effective electrical service to everyone within its territory. This is part of the territory. This is not my opinion. This is state statute. This is the requirement of law that they must provide this service. It is also the requirement of law that this service be provided in the most economical fashion. So it's not just an opinion that they don't want to do something. They're not allowed to go off and just spend money because there might be something available somewhere else. What we know from today is your comprehensive plan requires you, under Guiding Principle 3, to help ensure that the infrastructure and services are maintained and expanded at levels that are realistic and affordable. Your ratepayers are part of that system. That's part of your considerations. You also have recognized in your zoning code that substations can be a supplemental permitted use, and that those substations, as an SUP process, may not actually satisfy the neighbors. When you look at 19-1.01, part of your zoning code, it specifically says there are certain activities that are desirable or necessary, but may not be totally compatible with all the other uses and activities in their vicinity. I don't think anyone's saying anything different than that. There are incompatibilities that are involved here. So we take a look and we figure out what is going on. We know that there's no objection to a substation in general, just this location. There's no allegation of health, safety, or general welfare adverse effects. There is no objection as to the suitability of this site. This site is perfect. This is the site. When you consider all the statutory obligations of Evergy, location, efficiency, cost, reliability, this is the one and only site. Everything else, speculation, increased cost, decreased reliability. And there's also, I know that you talked to some realtors, Commissioner Stottlemyre, but the actual appraisal evidence that comes from the master's organization with regard to valuation specifically does not find that substations detrimentally affect the real estate value. There are internal anecdotal studies from Evergy with regard to Manhattan, with regard to Olathe, and north of Manhattan, showing the impact over time of a substation and that there's no related differences in value. And if there are questions on easements or eminent domain, I'm more than happy to answer all of those. But I think that our energetic engineer was quite accurate with regard to easements. As stated, all the uses remain within that easement. And matter of fact, if you look on those properties, you'll specifically see that the existing transmission line has been hayed underneath it forever. And you go across the street, and in fact, there are animal pens directly underneath it. There are some structures that are underneath it. So uses expressly are permitted and are allowable. Thank you for the time. We do represent to you that this is the location that is necessary for Evergy to fulfill its statutory functions.
Couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
You made the same statement I did and said it again. You said it didn't change the real estate value.
Yes, sir.
Is that your exact statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that is true, but it does affect the resale value of the property.
I'll have to disagree with you.
Would you build, I talked to several people, and there ain't no way they're gonna build a home right across the road from a 3-acre substation.
No, I will agree that there is a change in the amount of time that a property can stay on the market.
And can you tell me this? Is Evergy allowed to go on somebody's property without their permission and survey it?
I'll kind of be an engineer on this one. Evergy hires surveyors who are licensed in the state of Kansas to follow the law. We rely on those surveyors to follow the law. I don't know what they did, what they didn't do. I will say that the existing rights in that transmission line does give Evergy the right to be within that transmission.
Right. But this is not.
We can only instruct our surveyors to follow the law.
And they
Those are-
didn't.
I don't know.
You know, all right,
Thank you.
thank you. That's it? Was there anybody else that didn't sign up that wanted to speak? Okay. I'm looking again at this map and 6, 7, 8, 9 are all on one side of the road. The other side of the road, there were no properties considered, and I wondered if there was a reason why there were no properties considered south of. Because there is, if you move out further, there's not as many residential. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Is there any way we can get that up for everybody's benefit?
I think Dustin is doing that.
I want to have a reference to look at.
Okay, so here,
Oh, here we go. All right,
Yeah.
so, sorry, go ahead. What were you saying about six?
so there's properties that you considered on the north side of there, but not on the south side. And I wonder why the properties on the south side there were no properties on the south side considered.
There's a very large drainage area in this area that made it undesirable. I believe it fell out when we looked at wetland impacts and floodplain and floodway. So it's a wetland issue and then a floodplain and floodway. Back to the we won't build in a floodplain or a floodway. And we have regulations about wetland impacts that we have to comply with, so we have to minimize our wetland impacts. And that piece of property, you can see the drainage and the water features and all that. It just isn't feasible to put a substation there because of that.
I know I'm not supposed to talk again.
No, 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 no.
Right across from 9, another property just come for sale, 20 acres. It's a
This process has been
Yeah,
going
that's
on
what
for
she
over a
just said. It was not good because of the wetland issue. All right, guys, I guess it's in our court.
So you have three options here. You can approve the special use permit as submitted, though because a valid protest petition was filed, it is going to take a supermajority or a 4 out of 5 vote. If you don't get that, then the application necessarily fails. You can deny it. You can also remand it back to the Planning Commission with specific instructions to them on what you would like to see. But what I would tell you is, if you are not for this, if you walked into this meeting this morning with your mind made up, don't waste my staff's time. Like, don't waste the Planning Commission's time. And so those are your three options.
Do we have a fourth? Can we think about it for a week? I mean, does
Well, yeah, you
decision
don't have to,
be?
you don't have to vote today. You can always table it.
Yeah, so that would be our fourth option. We could table it if we
Sure.
need more, think we need, okay.
I understand the public, the greater benefit to all to have it. Is there, I can imagine having a favorable view of it if there was a significant amount of screening around it. And then if there's any way to get assurance that the transmission connection to the substation would run along the road. But it doesn't sound like that's possible at this point to know that.
Is that a question for the engineer, or who do you think it's a question
I
for?
saw heads shaking no. So is it?
Yeah, you're allowed to speak again.
Go
'cause
ahead.
Our
Come on
question.
up.
Yes,
Come on up.
Yes, please. No, yes.
So what the question was about the transmission line paralleling Texas Road, or?
Yeah, if you kept it tight to the road, because like they're saying, there's some very bad places a transmission line could cross.
Yeah,
to
hold
that
on.
substation.
So I can say that the primary route that we are looking at is I can't give definitives. That's what I hate about the preliminary process. As of right now, if we would get this, I would be looking at paralleling the transmission easement along either Rock Creek Terrace or the west boundary of that property. But I like the paralleling the Rock Creek Terrace because we can actually, our easement can overlap the waterline easement. The waterline easement that exists about 30 feet off of Rock Creek Terrace is a 20-foot strip And I just gave the survey drawing to someone. I can give this, I can run and get it to you. But basically, it doesn't allow us to put poles there, but we would have the aerial rights over top of the water easement. So that's what's appealing to me, is that we can overlap it and, you know, kind of reduce
ask you
it.
a question?
Yeah, go for it.
The big issue come up with the water district when they talked about you putting a road in to the substation. Now, wait, the big issue was the big heavy equipment running over their lines and running them and breaking them and so forth.
Sure.
And they talked about putting, encase the water lines
Like a culvert?
at the substation where it runs over between there and there, between the substation and Rock Creek Road.
Yeah.
And to protect it. What's going to protect those water lines on that property on the other side when you have a major happening and you got to bring big trucks in there?
So what we would need to do is we need to communicate with the water line about what their weight limits are, and what they design, like the topsoil in the lateral hoop pressures of the pipes below it. Surprisingly though, even though T-lines are big steel poles, they're actually pretty light compared to like a concrete truck. Because the steel tubes that we use are hollow, they're usually like less than half an inch thick. From an equipment standpoint, it's really not that much different from like your typical agriculture equipment going through it, because a steel pole can weigh anywhere from like 5,000 to like maybe 15, 20,000 pounds. That's a 10-ton truck. That's really, in terms of construction equipment, that's actually pretty light. But what we would do for construction, because we do, the heaviest thing that we would have would either be A, the transformer, putting it in, or B, the concrete truck. We would just talk with the water company and basically see what we need to do. What we typically would do before, to bring in the equipment, is we would typically either mat it, or if we need to go with a solution that satisfies the water line, we'll do that. Because, you know, their easement is first, therefore they have the superior rights to make sure that their equipment is protected. Similar, like we have an easement to protect our assets. So what we would have to do is we would just have to coordinate and see what they want us to do. Generally, matting usually helps it, because it's just like a big old, it's literally just a mat that helps distribute the stress and reduce the pressure on the pipes. If we needed to look at something more, more definitive, like a duct bank, or not a duct bank, excuse me, like a concrete pipe, we would just have to coordinate with the water line. But that is something that we do pretty regularly when we're looking at expanding and doing other construction work on, particularly in like the suburbs and the urban area where there's just water and gas lines all over the place. It's a part of the construction process.
It can be done. It can be done.
Sorry. I'm
That's what I was gonna say. We will work with
You were gonna
whatever
kick me, yeah.
Yes, sorry. We will work with whatever utility, if it doesn't get approved and we go to construction. Our construction contractors are very familiar with, and our company is very familiar with working with every entity to make sure that we comply with what we need to. And if we do damage something, we will fix it. So it's on us. If it is damaged, it's on us to fix it. But we will work with every utility and everybody around there to do what we need to do.
If we were to attach screening as a condition to the special use permit, what are your normal, I mean, obviously I've seen any number of things
Yeah.
done.
So we have several options. The least maintenance one, because you're going to plant something, it's going to die. The least maintenance one is a precast wall, a decorative wall that goes around it. You can't see it through it. You'll see some of the equipment above the top of it, but it's 9 foot, I believe, is our standard, 9 to 10 feet, somewhere around there. Precast wall. It's solid. It's a decorative concrete wall.
Does it help with noise?
Yeah, and there's the newer substations, their sound is significantly less and dissipates very quickly over a short area. So they're significantly less noisy. I mean, I've been to some in town that have the precast wall that you can't hear it over any of the road noise or anything else. It's very quiet compared to the older substations, which I understand the hum for the older ones.
Another question for the engineer. When Mr. Schultz was up here earlier, he gave another option of a smaller substation there and then connecting to Greeley. Is that?
Down south of Greeley, yes.
I can't speak to that other than that would completely change how we would operate the grid. That's something that, again, it would add millions and millions to the cost, because then we would have to develop that site. We would still have to build out the line to this substation, and we would have to build out this, well, You know, I'm not entirely sure what would happen. It would be a completely separate project, because the moment you start putting in more substations, you're changing how the grid behaves. And I'm not sure outside of, I know that that would be more disturbances, because we would have to build at 2 locations. We would have to do earthwork on the second substation, and then we would at least still have to rebuild the line, the 2 miles back. And
So if you
I'd have to think, I think we would still, well, we would likely still have to build that second one for a load capacity standpoint, because we want the, so we're talking about the west substation, right? So like going east and going south, we want those to act independently, so we would still need that second line that would have to have new easements affecting new property owners. We would have to be in a similar situation, well, not have to, but, you know, it's the similar situation where other landowners could then be affected and not want these new easements. But we have to build that second line back to the junction point, because from a load capacity, we don't want to put all of the load pushing from one direction to here to the 2 lines. We want those 2 to be completely separate from the Rantoul Junction substation.
It's not a want, it's a need.
It's a need, thank you, yeah,
It's not-
sorry.
It's not a want.
Yeah, simplify it, it's not, it needs to be
Yeah,
2
we're
going
not
back
here
that
for
way.
fun. Trust me, this is not the most fun part of my day.
I like my job.
We are not, I love my job, but this is not the most fun part of my day. We
would agree.
We don't do stuff for want. We need to. This is driven by reliability in the area. This is a need. Like Mr. Berger said, it's a need, it's not a want. It's what we're required to do. And that's where we're at. This is what we're required to do.
All right, more discussion, more questions.
Like I said, could potentially vote for be in favor of the special use permit. I would be the condition of screening for the substation, and then some assurance that the line went, abutted to Rock Creek Terrace, the transmission connection. So as far as the screening, I don't know how we would articulate that today, put that together. To me, you'd almost need to table it and come back with something, and then potentially vote on it in another meeting.
That would be the cleanest way.
But I would need to know that there are 4 of you.
That it's a worthwhile venture, yep.
It's a worthwhile endeavor.
My opinion is I'm gonna have a hard time supporting that. I think that, there's a lot better options within a half mile or so to the east. Be it clean, it looks more like, farm ground or pasture ground that, and you're getting away from a residential area. Sorry.
And I think that if we believe that a majority of you feel that way, then the cleanest thing to do would be to just decline to approve this special use permit. That doesn't preclude them from looking at other sites in the area. That just says this one is a no-go.
I'm going to second it because I feel there's a lot better options, just like Mr. Harris said. And would it make me a few dollars more involved? Yeah, maybe a few dollars more involved. But I'm all for more power out in that area and a substation. Whatever it takes, just do it right. Just there's a lot of, like there's been some drawings brought up that, and we're not none of us professionals that way, but I know there's other ways to do it than just that one. They pick one, and that's the only one. And I don't think hardly anybody was contacted on any of them properties up there. I know at least 8 or 10 of them I know personally that were never contacted, never even give it consideration. So I'm going to second to oppose it.
Well, you're using the word second. There wasn't a motion made
Oh,
to
I'm
be.
sorry.
So we have 2 people that are, so do we even,
Is there a motion to adjourn then? Or to oppose, to
Say,
deny?
you can make a motion to deny,
Deny.
okay?
Second.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
I'm gonna have to say yes too, because I disagree with a statement about property values. If you want to sell your property and you got something undesirable across the road for it, it's definitely gonna affect how you're gonna appeal to somebody to buy that property, buy her house or buy her property. If you just, messed up your, vista, previous vista of a prairie or, meadow or something like that, and then you have a substation right in the middle of your view, I think it's gotta affect the value of your property, so I'm voting yes also.
Commissioner Waymire?
Better place for it.
Commissioner Waymire?
I'm fine looking at other options or fine maybe making some concessions to try and make this work, but I'll vote no, so.
You'll vote what? I'm sorry.
No, because I'm open to both ways.
No, as in no, you
Not
don't,
to deny.
not to deny. Okay.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chair Dickinson?
It's making a difference, but I'll go,
You need to vote
yeah. I'll vote yes.
yes to deny.
Yeah.
So we have 4 votes yes to deny. Okay. Could we take a 10-minute or 5-minute break?
Yeah, I'm thinking of these poor ladies that have been sitting here waiting to do the report.
You gotta deny. Okay. Okay, yep.
So anyway, our second order of business is to discuss and consider for approval, charges for, I don't know if it's changes or charges for nurse practitioner and diabetes services.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. Yes, I would like to begin with introducing Susan Moore. And I would imagine many of you do already know Susan because she's been in the community for 26 years, helping many, many people. So, and again, she's our part-time nurse practitioner that, again, thanks to you guys, we have her here today to help many people in the community. But I'm just going to have her say a few words if she'd like, or if you have any questions for her before I propose the fee schedule. Okay?
So it's good to officially meet you all in this capacity. I would say that this is probably one of the most exciting times for the health department. We're getting to really listen to what people want us to be and then kind of mold things in that direction. And so I see it as a very exciting time. They're really good people that work there. They want to do the right thing for the community. And it's just exciting to meld those two things together. So I thank you for giving me that opportunity. And I'm really looking forward to meeting or exceeding those expectations.
Well, I know you want to do those things too. I've known you long enough that
Yes.
you got into medicine to help and
Yep, and it's weird to be more, you know, Tony and I got married, and I'm still changing my name on things. I look down and it still says Ward on my jacket, so anyway. So I go by several names, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Questions?
Thank you.
thanks.
Yeah, awesome. Welcome.
Well, great. The other part that we're super excited about with the health department is that we did achieve the diabetes self-management education and support accreditation. So today, what we would like to have you discuss is just the fees and charges for both the nurse practitioner and the DSMES is how I'll refer to it. I would like to, though, begin with thanking Pam Harris, Tammy Moore, and Susan for all their hard work with putting the fee schedule together. I know Pam spent a lot of time and research, asking other health departments. Again, her years of expertise definitely had a hand in all of this, and I definitely want to thank them. Of course, as you know, our goal is always to maintain our financial stability while continuing to offer more affordable services to our clients, including those that's underserved in our community. The fee schedule that you actually have in front of you is a list of services that we have been offering with our contracted nurse practitioner. But having Susan here for 20 hours a week versus having what we've had now in the past, which was 10 to 16 hours a month, there definitely may be an opportunity that we will have some new services come up. And if that opportunity arises, we will do the same thing that we did with our lab charges, like we discussed with you in detail back in June of 2022, which was we will look at what the Medicare and the Blue Cross and Blue Shield's allowables are, and then add 25% to that. Again, same procedure that we did in the past. So right now, I do believe Susan will become very busy. Currently, we are credentialing her. She just started last week, so we've got processes to learn, software to learn, and again, making sure everything is set up straight before we actually start to advertise her in the community.
So the
Okay.
allowables plus 25, that would be for like a cash pay scenario? Who would pay the plus 25?
Right, why the plus 25%?
Right, yeah, that's that why. There you go.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of the reasons is Medicare definitely doesn't cover our expenses. And so we would, the 25% is just to help to see if we could at least break even. Medicare pays differently than Blue Cross or any of the other private insurances. So we just always add just a tad bit to try to help meet our, does that help answer that?
Yeah, it does. It's frustrating that this isn't an us thing, that cash pay, we don't go through the trouble of insurance and billing and all that. They pay more than the people that are the most trouble, but we're 25% spread is much more modest than you see a lot of places. The cash price is 2-3 times higher. So I get it, but
Yeah.
it's not an us comment, it's a big picture comment.
Yeah, but you've got a great point, and thank you for mentioning that, is because we know that, again, looked closely at our charges and making sure, Pam, make sure that the prices that were set, that they are not higher than providers in our area to help meet our goal of helping those that are underserved. And again, just a more affordable prices to help everybody. So again, we didn't exceed the amount.
And I think we say it every time, but I don't think it can be said enough that our local providers like OFP is in favor of what we're doing here.
Yes.
And they absolutely.
Dr. Nichols met with Susan yesterday.
Great.
And, yep, everything's going well there. So, yes, sir. They
Part of
very-
building a whole system that everybody can get health care, not just, yeah.
Exactly.
And that's a great question or point, Colt, and we brought Dr. Nichols in very, very early in
Yes,
this
sir.
process. This is designed to help catch the folks who kind of slip through the cracks, so to speak, and develop that entire ecosystem of healthcare. So, yeah.
And we still have a sliding scale for,
Yes.
so
Yes, we
even
do.
if they come in, that sliding scale still applies.
Absolutely. We offer that to everyone. Yes, all of that is, yep. And the diabetes charges that you see there, again, the prices were, again, with that same method of that calculation of, again, we will always continue to need to look at what is the insurance is paying, what's actually coming in, what are our costs. And again, those fee schedules, as you know, we meet quarterly. In fact, meet again on March 6th at our Board of Health meetings. I will bring back any new information, and we will continually look at our fee schedule and also propose to you annually to approve it. But again, quarterly meetings, the next one on March 6th, we'll be going over that. The other thing I did just want to let you know that I am applying for a new grant, a grant that the Health Department has never applied for, and it's called Community-Based Primary Care Clinic. Just starting that process, thanks to Janet, getting me all the tools I need and documents to get that to work. So looking again, it's just a new opportunity for the Health Department because we've not had this, at least recently. I know years and years ago, they had a nurse practitioner and she was very busy, so. But I'm hoping to get that grant, but time will tell that as well, okay?
What is a community-based primary care clinic designation?
It is focusing on those that, again, that are underserved.
What
or
does that
under-
designation get us? Is it an enhanced pay rate or?
It's a grant like
Oh,
we
it's a
do
grant,
with our
okay.
maternal child health, our family planning.
Annual grant or once to build out the program?
I think it'll be an annual grant.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
I
exciting.
was thrilled that I had tried other opportunities through the state. One of them quickly shut the door and said, we have no funding. So checked this one and was glad to see that they do have it. Now, she did quickly also tell me, you may ask for 50,000, but you will not get 50,000 because it's also half dental, half primary care. So I'm going to, again, give us our true cost, and then we'll see what they will give us. So,
Looking into, that's
yes,
exciting.
definitely. We definitely meet the goals with, I've started to fill out the application. We definitely, is that exactly where we're at. This is the kind of people, we want to help everybody in the community. Those gaps, we need to fill the gaps of those that we need to serve. Great question. So, questions or anything, or Pam?
Question and a comment.
Add anything?
Comment. I know personally from the diabetes part how important it is. You know, Brenda was available 5 or 6 years ago when I had my battle with it and helped me walk through it and get through it. And you need somebody like that. You just can't battle it on your own. You gotta have a professional that knows and tells you, don't do that.
Did I do
You
that?
can't be doing that no more. You know, and she provided a lot of information that I wouldn't have got anywhere else and led me in the right way, and I feel great now, so, thank you.
You did awesome. You did great, so thank you.
Excited. These are the kind
Thank you.
of changes and programs that'll have health outcomes for the community, measurable ones, I think, so.
Yes.
And one of the things that is on there is a new employee physical, which the county has to go pay for it. I guess it's an opportunity to leave it right, put it right in here.
Right, and make it convenient, because Susan is going to work for us 5 days a week, even or 4 hours a day, and we're going to alternate that. So again, a huge thank you to Susan for being available to us, because that is crucial, you know. We need to have, when we need her, we need her. So that'll be great, so.
Brenda, do these change of costs, what does that represent from the old costs?
Great question. Actually, it is the same cost, correct, Pam? Right? Yeah, it's really the same cost that we've done with our other nurse practitioner, where I apologize, I probably didn't make it very clear. We do believe there'll be new services needing to be added to that list, and that's when we're going to use that policy of look at what insurances will pay us, Blue Cross, Medicare, the standard, plus the 25%. But currently, the cost you have in front of you is the cost that we have already, using currently with our contracted nurse practitioner, which of course we no longer have that contracted. I've worked with Derek on doing the appropriate process to not have that in place. So Pam, anything you'd like to add to that? So she's my expert. Let's really ask her about that. So
what we're hoping is that Susan is busy every day. And what we don't know is what specifically a patient might need. So on the form that you have, the numbers in red are called CPT codes, and those are very specific to what you do for that particular patient. And so I guess what we're trying to say is if we were to bring you our whole spreadsheet of every service that Susan will probably provide, would be many pages, lots of CPT codes. We just don't know what all that will be, but a year from now we will. Our previous nurse practitioner was focused just on family planning.
So this just keeps you from having to come to us every time you have a new red code to
Yes.
put a number to it. We just know that you might be adding things, and this is how you're going to determine the price.
Correct,
on it.
correct. And the
Awesome.
CPT codes are the universal or uniform language in healthcare between medical providers and insurance providers to be able to speak the same language, to
The
know if
UPC
you.
code on the back of your Cheerios, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
You ready for it? Oh, go ahead, Roy.
No.
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve adding to the health department's fee schedule, the new services and charges for the nurse practitioner and diabetes nutrition service lines.
Do we have a second? All right.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Dickinson?
Yes. And welcome, Susan. All right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, our third item of business, discuss and consider for approval adding EMR, EMT, and AEMT initial courses of instruction to the current fee schedule. Christy Hilliker.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Hi.
Almost afternoon, but morning.
It is. So currently, Franklin County, with our preferred provider education number with the state, we can offer initial courses of education to include emergency medical responder, EMT or emergency medical technician, and then advanced EMT. Those are classes, particularly our AEMT class is going to start next month. We do have some interest from outside entities that we would be charging a fee for the class for them to take. Also have found that there's interest in EMR and EMT too within the community through some of our rural fire departments. So we wanted to do something to establish a fee for those people that are taking the class externally. And just so you are aware of how I came up with the fees, I did provide a supplemental document from the Kansas Board of EMS. They specifically have an education incentive grant program, and these prices correlate directly with what the Kansas Board of EMS will pay for a grant. So it does allow more individuals to be able to take the class with minimal out-of-pocket cost.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. So an affirmative motion would be, I make a motion to approve the initial course of instruction fee for EMR to be $320, the fee for EMT to be $1,150, and the fee for AEMT to be $1,500.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Dickinson?
Yes. And our fourth item of business is again Christy Hilliker, discussion of implementing a countywide naloxone?
Yes, Narcan.
Narcan, all right.
Yes.
Use policy for dissemination to schools and other entities named in the Kansas State Statute 6516, 127 emergency opioid antagonists, rules and regulations.
Yes, it's a long one.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Brenda join me on this one if it's okay.
Oh, sure.
Because this really was a joint effort with us and the health department and is going to remain that way. I know I have spoken to you and the sheriff has spoken to you about just the number of overdoses that were being seen. There is a program by Kansas State statute under the Board of Pharmacy that allows for first responders, teachers, some other entities to have a medical director or a physician oversee a Narcan policy for them. And we've had a lot of interest in the county in moving forward with that. I know I get contacted almost daily. Where can I get Narcan? Brenda's experiencing the same thing. So we felt it important to come up with a uniform policy for everybody. That way, if somebody wants to provide Narcan on their premises, we can provide the education that's needed to go along with it and find them some resources to obtain the Narcan, and then have a policy that's in line with the Board of Pharmacy and some additional quality assurance and quality improvement processes to monitor its use.
I might peel back a level further. So this started being discussed. You've heard me talk several times about our group that gets together to discuss the opioid crisis that involves several key players, the sheriff, Brandon Jones, Dustin Browning, and we started talking about this, and that's one of my favorite groups because we don't meet just to meet. We meet to discuss practical ways that we can really help this community, and this policy is an example, and Brenda and Christy and Pam, they took the lead on this. They've been in communication with schools. The schools were very receptive to this. I mean, we believe that this is a tangible way that we're gonna make things safer, or as safe as they can be. So definitely in support of this. This is great work right here.
Looking at the kit estimates, and that's the number of, I assume that's the number of doses and
That's correct.
then in each bag.
Pam was able to find some guidance on, based off of it was elementary or middle school or high school, university, what the recommended doses of Narcan were for them to have on their premises.
Gotcha.
And this would be a cost of if we were able to provide them that number of Narcan also with a bag that they can store it in that's actually marked like opioid overdose kit. We did find out though that what was it, the 340B funds for Narcan, that they cannot use that.
Right.
But Kramer Pharmacy, I'll let you speak to that.
Well, again, I'm going to have to give credit to Pam on this one. So that again, she talked to them extensively, and that basically our 340B, it's again against the regulations, so we can't order.
340B, what's that?
That is how we order some medications for our health department.
Oh, we can't
get a
use that
reduced
to buy,
price
okay.
Because we meet the requirements. But one of the requirements is that you can't buy it and then.
Give it away.
Exactly. So, but, research is good to do because rules change, and Pam did a great job of just double checking, because of course we want to, what we were looking at doing is just a starter kit, just to even, with the funding that we're getting, with the, settlement that we got, that maybe even if we could provide to the schools a starter kit. So we don't plan to provide it long-term, so we were just looking at other avenues that maybe could help save money to the schools, and that's where Auburn Kramer's is definitely willing to come and help.
There's EMS cost and HD cost. What's HD cost?
Health Department.
Oh, that makes sense. But we may not.
Yes.
That's not an option.
Right, that is not an option.
Okay.
So when this was written, we didn't know for sure. We were looking at all avenues
What's
and
this?
in hopes to find the most economical, but that avenue has now,
What's the shelf life?
That's what I was gonna ask, yeah.
a year or two, didn't we look at
It's
some of them?
approximately 20,
years.
24 months.
Couple of years. But we're hoping that at that point, they pick up the,
Yes.
And that's how we will encourage them that we'll have to. And again, I think we meet again this afternoon with that great group. We'll make a final decision whether or not we will actually give the starter kits. But really, we definitely love the teachings and the education that, again, EMS will be providing. And then our health educator, Ashley Confer, will actually, with Dr. Nichols' help, and again, with the forms that need to be filled out, make sure that everything and assist is needed. But I am thrilled that, again, EMS will actually be doing the teaching because this is what they do every day. And they will get questions that I know that, in the beginning at least, I don't feel like we would be the best at the table, and that's where EMS comes in, and I'm very thankful for that. So.
And I haven't had specific discussions with the superintendents, but I don't think the schools are gonna have an issue ultimately taking over the costs. I think they're so grateful that the county has taken the lead on this, that the county's putting a procedure in place, keeping it on their radar. I think that if we do, and certainly want your guys' input on these starter kits, but if it is something that we provide to them, I think they'll be so grateful for that we'll get them on a good path. And them ultimately funding it down the line, I just don't see it as an issue.
I think more than anything else, it's not just having it, it's how do you use it?
Right.
Because there actually is a high level of conversation. People were like, we want a prescription. We want to be able to just get a prescription for it. But just having it doesn't mean that you know what to do with it.
What we found with statute, with the Board of Pharmacy, was there is a requirement that you have initial education with it, and then education occurs every 2 years thereafter. And that is in the policy as well. So we do get, like I said, we'll get calls, hey, can you get me Narcan? Well, it's not that simple. We want to make sure that we're doing it by Kansas statute.
I think there's any number of things that we can spend tax dollars on to improve public health outcome, but it's important to remember these aren't tax dollars. These are settlement dollars
Correct.
from the companies that created the opioid crisis to try and negate the effects of the opioid crisis. So I think it's important to note the thought process is maybe a little different there.
And the last I checked last week just to look at what our opioid overdose numbers were. And Franklin County is still higher than even national average per capita, considerably higher. So we're still in the very much dark red zone, and very much would like to be none or way below national average, but that's not the reality. And this it gives us a step in the right direction to help save some lives and give somebody a second chance.
And there is no specific action that we need to take. This is basically just a discussion.
Well, so if you're ready or feel ready to approve the policy, I mean, we brought it in front of you just to discuss. This was one that we'd had for a little bit, but we didn't want to put it when we were dealing with the wind farms extensively. We delayed this. If you are comfortable with the policy, I think we'd love for you to approve it, but certainly you don't have to. We can bring it back another time. If we had had a study session Monday, this would have been on your study session, but we weren't open Mondays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can't talk.
There are several school districts, as you
Yeah.
know, in Franklin County, and so some of the school boards have been presented this by their nursing staff, the idea. And so I think they're really looking for a policy that's been approved so that they can present that to their school board officials to ask for them to participate in the same program, to get the training and to have Narcan on site. And yes, it does include elementary all the way through Ottawa University. Since they're here in town, they also wanted to participate in our program.
I think if you have the EMS and the health department and they worked on this, I don't know as if we know anything more than you all do too. So I think if you guys are good with the policy, I wouldn't have a problem. What do y'all think?
Good policy, good use of dollars.
Comfortable with the policy, I could vote on it today.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Dickinson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
All right. Our fifth item of business is to consider holding a public hearing on March 8th to consider upgrading the 400 to 550 block of Texas Road north of Butler Terrace to full maintenance. David Lee.
Commissioners, I was contacted by a landowner that is interested. They would like to build a house on their property. The property actually runs all the way to John Brown, but due to the creek and the floodplain, it's not feasible to have an entrance off of John Brown, and really the only piece of property that is outside of the floodplain is towards the south, that access would be granted off of Texas Road, which is minimum maintenance in this area. Ordinarily, when I'm approached by these sorts of requests, I'm not overly supportive, simply because we have more than enough roads in our county that we have to maintain to full maintenance, and adding additional miles just makes the job a little bit harder. However, in this case, in my research related to this, several years ago, there was Mr. Hague attempted to close part of this road due to the bridge structure that's just north of this, where this house would be. And the community in that area was very much against closing the road and closing that bridge. So I don't think that we will ever probably get away from that. And so this is not just a dead-end road. It will upgrade 3/4 of a mile to get to their property, which would allow them the ability to build their home. But it would still be minimum maintenance north of there, just like it is today. The process to upgrade a road is similar in nature to the process to vacate a road. You have to have a public hearing, you have to send notifications, you have to publish in the newspaper, which we will do all of those things. Additionally, our policy states that the requesting entity is responsible for paying for all of the rock and any tubes and that sort of thing that would be required for this project. I have looked at it with our superintendent. We have put together an estimate. I have shared that with the applicant. And due to the fact that it's just the material cost, our policy doesn't require them to pay for our time or our equipment and those sorts of things. The $10,000 or so that it was going to cost to create that full maintenance road, they're very interested in moving forward with. And so based on those things, I'm bringing it before you to request a public hearing, and then we can have additional discussion, and I'll make sure the applicant is here for that public hearing, and anybody else that would be willing to or want to speak towards that item. This is also, the road now, it's right on a rock shelf, so we'd have to build it up. So we wouldn't be digging necessarily. We'd bring in material, build it up so that we could get some drainage and those sorts of things.
All right, so we're just moving today on the public hearing, so we don't really need a robust discussion on the whole thing itself, just to establish the public hearing. So the specific action would be, if you want to do affirmative motion, would be I make a motion to hold a public hearing on March 8th to consider upgrading the 400 to 550 block of Texas Road north of Butler Terrace to full maintenance.
I would add that at some point I may want to come back and revisit this resolution. And you know, this is the first request we've had to upgrade a road, but it seems to me that the time and expense and equipment used to do this construction ought to be paid for by the applicant as well. And so sometime that may become back before you in a study session so we can talk about that specifically. But for this project, we'll follow the letter of the
In this
law that we've
instance, I
got
can
set.
potentially see a public use because it's connecting two roadways, but yeah, if it was simply to make somebody's land more valuable or,
Yeah.
yeah, it wouldn't be a good use of public dollars. I'd make a motion to hold the public hearing.
Very good.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Chair Dickinson?
Yes. All right, we'll move on to staff reports.
We discussed the opioid settlement a little bit earlier. There is actually a new one with a different group of defendants. This involves Teva, Allergen, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart. Kansas is still a participating state. Franklin County is technically still a participating subdivision, but I would have to execute a new agreement. It's literally the same thing as we've already done. It's just a different group of defendants, but I don't want to do that without blessing from the five of you. So do you have any issues at all with that? This will lead to more, settlement funds that we will then, of course, put into this community. And those settlement funds are gonna go somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. Y'all?
I had no
good?
problem with that. Have you heard, did the little towns around get the same kind of money but now they're trying to figure out where it needs to go or
No, that you had to be
the opioid money?
That I don't know.
I know Rantoul received it.
I feel like they had the opportunity to opt in as being their own
Yeah.
subdivision.
I know they contacted the state and was figuring out what they needed. I think they already got the money. I mean, now they're figuring out where, you know yourself, it needs to go the right place. Just because you got it don't mean you got to do the right thing with it. I think they had contacted to see what they were legally supposed to do.
Sure.
Yes, I'd be in favor of us being a part of that.
Okay.
Right? Yeah?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of those, somebody's gonna get it, so might as well be us.
Over the last couple of weeks, I've been in contact with Judy Hancock. You may recall she's one of the gals who spoke at our, when we were discussing the special use permit for wind farms. Judy, she owns property in Franklin County, had a relationship with her or known her for several years. She was also involved in the motocross deal out off Tennessee Road. She has become, it seems to me, this is my own speculation, but it seems to me she's kind of become the spokesperson for the group of folks that are concerned about commercial wind energy. She has continued to ask about a quote-unquote moratorium on wind farms. And we've had discussions on if the board were interested, what that may look like. I think if you were interested, what we would technically be doing in my mind is people keep talking about the comp plan. It's really the zoning regs. It's our zoning regs that have the renewable language in them. So if you were interested in a quote-unquote moratorium, we would basically, I think it could look any number of ways, but I think we would want to pass a resolution and we would walk through the same process that we would if we were going to amend our zoning regs. So we'd notice it up, we'd hold a public hearing at the Planning Commission, it would go through that entire process. It would culminate with a resolution that effectively says, for a period of X years, Franklin County will not consider commercial wind energy applications. I don't have strong feelings on this. I think on one hand, I could argue it's overkill. You sent a strong message. You're not pro wind farm. We have no other applications out there. If I get contacted, I'm going to let them know we've already voted this down. I have no reason to believe that that a subsequent project would succeed. Having said that, I don't think it would be a terribly time-consuming task to walk through this and do that. One thing that I will push back on is I've got a brand-new planning director. The process of amending that comprehensive plan is huge. And I'm not going to put that on his plate inside of his first year. So if we're going to do a moratorium, I would recommend we do it until such time as the comp plan has been amended. But we wouldn't even start that process until, what, at the earliest, probably late '24. We've got the software project, which is going to require, I think the vendors told you, thousands of hours of digitization. In other words, taking our paper files and uploading them into the new software. That is on our agenda for this year. Not in favor of looking at that comp plan. So if this moratorium gives some folks a peace of mind, I don't have an issue with it, but I need feedback from the five of you on your thoughts.
I kind of agree with what you said about, probably nobody's going to come back. I know Harvey County just yesterday did a moratorium, and I know Anderson, Osage, Lynn, and Miami County have moratoriums. They're short one. I don't know what the good of having a short one is. 6 months, I think it is. I think Harvey County was just 6 months also. But I think the difference in Harvey, they were already in process of doing things. And it just put a stop to everything until more time to discuss. So we're not started anything, but I don't think it would hurt to have it just to end the conversation on that subject, but then start the study of the future of what do we want to do.
And I think those discussions all need to be part of that comp plan process.
Right.
Like I want to take a wholesale look at it, not pull bits and pieces and remove that. Like we want to look at it all. What do you all want the county to look like?
Yeah.
Renewable energy is part of that. And again, we look forward to that discussion in late '24, probably in '25 if we're being real.
It might put to rest some, because we're still getting emails from people about, and I'm like, but they voted it down, why are we still getting emails? But maybe that would just, give them the peace of mind that, okay, we really aren't, going to do anything until we have a chance to look at but you're saying instead of putting an actual time on it, just saying until we have a chance to review the.
Put a time.
What's that?
Yeah, your document, you said we would put a time.
Yeah, I would recommend putting a time, like whether that's until, what are we in we start in '24, the end of '26 maybe, like December, moratorium until December 31 of 2026. That gives us.
Which is basically 3 years.
Plenty of time to,
No,
because we want that moratorium.
That's 4 years.
To be in effect until that process of amending the plan is done. And that process, is we're going to do it the right way, that's going to take a long time by the time you set up public hearings to solicit feedback in various parts of the county. So that
We do get, yeah, I agree. It doesn't do much, but that's fine. If it lets us move past that, because we have, there's a whole lot more to that department than windmills. And there's a whole lot more departments in this county than planning and zoning. And then there's a whole lot more that the county does than what is it within the county in our departments. So it's fine. That date sounds good and that sounds fine. I'm excited to go through. I hope that we get that kind of an involvement for the community, for the comprehensive plan, because many of the logic applied to windmills applies to how we split up land. If we want to preserve farm ground, if we want to continue to have this much development in the county or more, or where, I mean, that, if those concerns are genuine, they definitely apply to a number of things that the department does and the comprehensive plan contains, so.
One question I would have is, because probably before the end of 2026, we're going to be seeing applications for solar also. Do we want to include that in our moratorium at this point? So we have a chance to.
That is entirely up to the five of you, but
It's going to come up before, I would think.
We haven't even discussed that. To me, those are two separate issues. We may have to deal with that one very well, but.
I think they are entirely separate issues,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, as far as wind's concerned, I'd be fine with that.
Well, this will all come back in front of you. Like I said, we'll initiate the process like we would any amendment to the zoning regs, so it will ultimately be in front of you.
Okay, all right.
I assume you're looking to see if there's an appetite to move forward on it. Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's good feedback. Yeah, you all know this, but I will officially introduce Pat. Pat Toth, he's been our building official for several years now. Super excited about Pat. Pat has got a very high ceiling. And when you look at how Pat interacts with the public, it's fantastic. And I very few at the county do it better than he does. Very good at relating to folks, very good at trying to help them accomplish what it is that they've set out to accomplish while also respecting our codes. So, Pat, you're welcome to come up if you want to.
Awesome.
Just have one item, and I won't take much time. I know we've been here for a while. March 16th is our next planning commission meeting, and I want to invite the public, and I want to invite you guys and anybody that's wanting to see that. We have three real good ones for special use, and then one rezoning, standard rezoning. We have a comm tower going right outside of Ottawa, so we've sent out about 37 parcels to those individuals in the immediate vicinity. That's for AT&T. We have a tow yard off of 15th, Interstate and 15th. Right now, it's kind of just a lot that has a bunch of miscellaneous items laying on it, almost like a scrap yard, but nothing's really being scrapped. And that they intend to clean it up and utilize it. Basically, it's the same function as it is, just a cleaner process. And then we have a Walmart coming in with their distribution center. Now, I mentioned this last meeting that they had a permit. They've actually got 3 different permits, and one of them is a special use permit. It involves hydrogen. So this is kind of new across the country. We don't have a lot of regulations on hydrogen because it's a new technology that regulations haven't really been considered for within any of our ICC codes or zoning regulations, so this is going to be something new. We're going to be looking at a lot of engineered drawings to see what kind of safety features we got with Tom Winters already, and we kind of have a map of what could potentially disastrously happen and how we're going to protect against that based on the drawings that we're receiving for safety mechanisms that would be. So we have some exciting things coming up. I just want to throw the invite out there, and the more participation is the better, especially from the public. I mean, more eyes on this, the more transparent we are, the more educated everybody is about what's going on in their county. And that's basically all I got coming up. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, Christy, do you have anything more? Kyle? No? All right, David Lee.
Just a couple of quick things. We've got our first 2 employees that went through that have gone through our CDL program. They're, in fact, I met them at the gate at about 6:30 this morning. They were headed up to take their driving test this morning. So that is great. I'm hoping that they get her done on the first time. And then we've got a few others still in the pipeline. The other thing, while we're in the meeting, I got a notification that the Osborne Terrace Bridge is scheduled for the April 19th letting. And so that remains on track to get done this year.
Awesome.
That's all I have.
All right, Janet. I don't have anything. All right, Commissioner comments.
I'll just mention one little thing. Paul, last week worked with 3 other counties to put on the economic deal for small businesses, and they held it in Garnett. Did a great job, had a big turnout. I think I heard a lot of people comment how much they enjoyed it, and they worked with Jerry Turnipseed down there. And that's one of the things we've been trying to do with the deal I did to the Lake region, trying to get these guys to work together, and so we all know what's going on. So that's all I got to say.
I don't have anything.
All right.
Oh, I went to ECAM meeting last night, and they went over they just had a program to assess their pay plan, and they went with about $1 an hour across the board pay increase for all categories of their operation. There was a little bit behind, and they're looking for next year of a COLA of 5.6%. Another thing they did, they're closing the Head Start and Payola because of finding enough employees to operate it. It's going to affect about 26 kids over there. And, they're going to try to accommodate them in some way to at-home services or something like that. And I think that's about it for ECAM.
Cool.
A normal week, been to plenty of things, but nothing rises to the level I need to take up your time.
Yeah, I really haven't. I did get to meet before I left on my vacation. I met with Rebecca Schmoy, just sat down and just talked with her, basically this is who I am and this is who you are. And so now I know how to contact her and she knows who I am. I did get to listen to the legislative coffee that happened the first weekend, first Saturday in February, and the next one will be the first Saturday in March. We got some new people working for us in Topeka. It's important for us to keep in contact with them because the decisions they make will come back and affect our county. I'm heading to Topeka as soon as we get done for a KAC board meeting, and otherwise, we do have a meeting at noon today with the city and the school board to discuss policy for Proximity Park, because hopefully we're going to get somebody in there. Other than that, I don't know as if we have anything else, so we.
So move.
We'll move.